Hi guys, 732 Review Crew back. I am Mikey.
And I'm Mike.
And this is our reaction to Knives Out as voted on by our Patreon community. Now, I'm very excited for this one because I don't know too much about it except that the former Bond is in it.
I know nothing.
And Anna de Armas. And I'm very excited to see what it's about because it's apparently very good. This is really just a really blind reaction because our community wants us to watch it and we don't know anything else.
Do you think Joe had seen it?
Joe probably saw it. Rest in peace, Joe. No, I'm kidding. Please don't. Besides that, though, we're ready to jump into this. We're going to be starting in 3, 2, 1. And thank you to our Patreon community for voting on this. And thank you for joining us. My house, my rules.
Man, I fucking love these movies.
That was great. Oh my god, that was honestly one of the best movies I watched recently too. A lot of these newer movies that come out that are like, you know, just chaotic in the sense, like Everything Everywhere All at Once in this movie have been just phenomenal, especially with the whole, you know, just the whole mystery of what's going on.
Cinema like that,
contemporary cinema. I mean, I feel like this was like a great dark comedy mystery movie. It was great.
So I've seen the Glass Onion movie previously, which finally I have a relevant movie.
So you saw the sequel somehow?
Benoit Blanc is probably one of my my favorite take on like a modern Sherlock Holmes type style character, and I think Daniel Craig absolutely fucking nails it. I like him so much more as this character than I do as 007.
You know what's crazy? Because like I feel like 007 as a character is like a template character, so you don't really get to do your own thing and make your own name,
right?
Because you're compared to
you're fulfilling a role.
You're fulfilling the role. You're compared to all the other Bonds.
You don't have a chance to make the role yourself.
Which he, you know, with Blanc, he does it himself.
He's just so good at it.
So good.
Too.
And the best part I think of this entire movie was waiting to hear what he sounded like, because I was like, is he gonna be a British detective? And no, he sounds like Foghorn. That's great. I love it. I couldn't place it at
without going into spoilers. That's basically the how Glass Onion's written, and the end of that is similarly like, fuck yeah, dude, that's genius.
I mean, I really enjoyed all like the flashing back and forward. This one, sometimes when that happens in movies, I'm not really a big fan of it because it can be a confusing thing or makes it hard to follow. In this one, though, it really helps set the tone of the movie because it's a mystery movie, so we need to kind of see it. And I like how there was some. I guess there was some that were kind of like altered in terms of like, you know, our perspective, because unless we see it from like, you know, for example, when the Gobor falls, you know, we don't know what it looks like until you get the full perspective. But I mean, this movie really, it's just like Everything Everywhere All at Once. It feels like emotional whiplash in which you're going from laughing.
See, like I know what you're saying about that,
not as much.
Yeah, I wouldn't make the comparison to that. It's almost.
A lot of emotions. It has a good range.
Oh my god! And the dialogue they wrote so
and again
well.
With a feel good moment, because you know, it builds up. You're kind of confused with the mystery and the suspense. You kind of, you know, you making your list of suspects like I did, and then you kind of just keep going through the motions, and you kind of feel you get little pieces of the puzzle, just like the detectives get little pieces of the puzzle, which is a great thing, great writing to learn as the detectives learn, because we're not some you know, omnipotent, like, you know, viewer, which I feel like I enjoy that more because it adds to the suspense.
Right.
And then the moment you kind of get like some of the pieces of the puzzle, for example, you think Linda was the person just based on her just talking.
We're just throwing a dart off the beginning.
That. You know, you think Wolf is is it Walt? Walt is it because he got, like, you know, he lost.
But the writing's so good in the fact that it was technically he killed himself. Like.
No, oh, it breaks my heart.
He was not murdered, even though there was attempted murder that was inadvertently stopped that then led to his own suicide.
Exactly. But
it's so convoluted, but like clear as day.
But until we get all the pieces of the evidence, we don't know that.
Right.
It requires going through the motions, and eventually we get the story from all the kids and find out they're all kind of being removed from the will in some sort of way and being cut off, which gives all the kids a motive to do it, but it doesn't place them at the scene. And then we finally speak to Marta, his personal aide / nurse, that gives us more information. And we learn that, and I think it's one of a great, like, you know, just characteristic for her. You know, she can't lie,
and she has such a good tell that sets up.
It's so good. And I mean, she throws up, which is great because, like, you know, it's so like visible as a tell. Like, it's not like a twitch. It's like literally she throws up when she lies, and the detectives use that to their advantage, and so does I believe. Ransom uses it to his advantage, or so he thinks, you know, because she eventually kind of learns how to surpass it. But part of that is also her friendship with Harlan, is he teaches her how to lie in a way where he says, just tell different parts of the truth, kind of, and you'll get around it by getting different parts out. Just don't tell the full story, which I thought just really exemplifies their friendship, because he's so lonely as a person. Anybody that comes to him just comes for money, but she's the only person that gives him some type of a joy. She doesn't know that he's in the will. I mean, he wrote her into the will,
right.
And he probably knows about the killer, the Slayer rule. So like the moment he knows that that's potentially happening,
he was like, "You need to clear yourself."
Yeah. And it just shows just how, like, despite the fact that all these kids are shit and they're spoiled and all this stuff, Harlan himself, who is a self-made man, is still very grounded in his, thoughts and whatnot,
right? Which
is, very rare from, what you see as like a whole, almost like a dynasty family coming from this.
It's funny you say that, because I'm thinking of I've watched a couple, I guess 2 seasons of Succession, and the father in that movie or in that show is similarly just fed up with his children. However, he's not as nice as our main character here.
Interesting. So speaking of the main character, I love how he likes to play games in a way, which comes back many times in this whole thing, because one of the games is, and that's not really a game, but it's the secret letter to his daughter,
right,
which is amazing, because when the son-in-law finds it,
he's like, "Oh, it's just blank."
It's blank, whatever. Yeah, exactly. But they have a secret language. He's an eccentric man, and that's so good. And the way he reveals it, and that part of, I guess, that will take her focus instead of the inheritance.
And she was pretty much like the bulldog that was charging it. So yeah, she's distracted with her divorce,
and she has a lot of money though. So like she has a prenup with her husband. He gets nothing. So I mean, she's a lot of money. And she's got like her own, I guess, business. It seemed like
Jay runs a real estate company.
Exactly.
Boston, apparently.
So that she's probably making good money if based on just her demeanor and whatnot. So she probably doesn't need the extra money. But when you're wealthy, any bit of extra wealth obviously adds.
What I do really like about this is the dialogue in these movies. I like that the knife callback was insane. How it was like a one-off line of like, these kids wouldn't know a real knife from a fake one, and he's like, it was like supposed to be a moment where he's talking to Marta as he's stabbing the thing. He's like, "I wish I could fix it," blah blah blah, and then it all comes back at the very end where he literally tries stabbing her, but it's a fake knife from this insane prop setup that they have in the house. And like, that's just one of so many. The other part that absolutely sent me, there's 2. It was the political family debate.
That was great.
Which was literally verbatim, like every time I've heard one. It was insane. And personally, I've experienced this since my wife's from Honduras, is just no one knew where she was from, and it's every country except where they're from.
Mexico, Ecuador,
Colombia,
that was
Mexico.
That was terrible, but also so funny.
It's so real. The dialogue,
but also just highlights American ignorance, because a lot of us will be like, eh. The whole dialogue was great. Just the difference of characters. Just because they all came from a rich family doesn't mean they have the same viewpoints. Because obviously there's a split with, like, it almost feels like there's a liberal and conservative side on the families. But it's funny because while they have disputing dissenting viewpoints, they're brought together by their greed. Even the daughter Meg,
right,
who technically had enough money to go to college, but her mom took it all for herself,
and then it made it her problem because the mom is just living off of that,
and she's like an influencer on Instagram. Like, it's so many great little things that the director, the writers, and everything put in here.
Absolutely stellar.
My favorite, I wrote on this too, and I'm so glad it came back. It came back, I think, twice as far as I can remember, if not 3 times. The first one being the ball, when they threw the ball outside. We thought it was going to break a window. It didn't. First time it comes back is when they're walking outside, detectives, and don't they walk over to Marta by doing so?
No, well, they walk around the house and then end up with Marta in the backyard.
So that's the plot device there. And then the second time that I can remember it being a plot device is with the daughter bringing it back to the room and then putting it on the stand and then finding the letter next to it.
Yeah, pretty much. If he hadn't thrown that ball, that wouldn't have happened.
And then there's a third one, I think. I believe there's a third one. Maybe I'm wrong, where the dogs run up and down the mud path with the ball. But
the dogs are actually critical to this story, and it's That's what I really like about these movies is that they really do encapsulate the good writing idea of like everything should be relevant. There wasn't a detail in this movie that was irrelevant. Every line of dialogue, the dogs being in that like involved in the story, they weren't just like, oh, there's dogs, which is why they barked at 3 a.m. Like the dogs were critical to everything lining up. Like it's very good writing. It's beautifully done. I love it.
I love it too. I'm gonna say one of the things I wrote down I had to bring up. I love how you noticed there was a guy from Snow Dogs in this because
Oh my God, I love him.
That's a great thing for you to bring up. You're like, is that him? Is that him?
As soon as I heard the voice, I was like, I know that voice. That was a core memory.
I like how there also was the Gravity Rainbow little comment about the book.
And then I was like, I've never read it. And
they were
he's
like,
like, no one's ever read it.
Nobody's ever read that book. And you're like, oh, okay, great. I don't know if you ever recognize some of the background dialogue or things going on, especially the background dialogue between the police officers that are there. It's pretty funny.
What do you mean by that?
The cop and the lieutenant, the patrolman. And sometimes they were saying stuff that was like either there was subtitles for, or it was just slightly out of like subtitle, but you could still hear it. And it was just so much fun. Like, like he's like, oh, like, the one patrolman was like, oh my God, and the other detective's like, I don't get it. And stuff like that. And it's,
big fan. I love the books. That's why I was seeing this. Benoit was like going. The lieutenant was like, all right, chill out there. He's like, no, let him cook. Let him cook.
Let me see what else. There's one or two things left to bring up. So I like how everything did come back to, for example, you said the broken Travis. Was it Travis? Trellis came back, but not in the way we thought it would, because technically, because the broken trellis happened, they find the secret entrance, but it actually pins Ransom instead of her because of what
he goes to look up and sees Grandma is like.
And we didn't notice that when Grandma said that the first time. Her first dialogue was
back
just
again,
back again.
Already.
On second watch, that'll be like, oh my God, it's so in front of us. But like, you're like, well, yeah, back again. Yeah, he visited today and he's back again. But no, it's literally because it was like hours before that. And I love how there's just, almost like this comedic opposites of what happened between him and her. So the dogs didn't let him in. The dogs were like, "Oh, you come on in. We know you."
And Benoit even calls that fact out at closer. He's like, they're the best judge of character.
Yes, the dogs literally tell us who's the evil person. And because Linda comes in and they're like, "Oh, right, puppies," and the dogs are like, "We love you," because she obviously comes and visits the dogs. But it seems like this. I guess that's her son was Ransom. He doesn't visit often.
The dogs don't like him.
Yeah. Besides that, I just want to say this was just a fun time. The characters were all eccentric and great. I loved everybody. Even if there's character tropes like the liberal college girl and the alt-right white guy boy whatever, and and the whole argument they had, as well as everything. I just loved how it was a great movie with great themes, and the theme of it by the end is is that Marta had to be herself the entire time, because if she trusted her instinct from the start, he would still be alive. That's the biggest thing to bring up, is the liquids were swapped. And when you work in healthcare, I'm a radiology tech for people who are new here. When we do things, contrast related, even contrast related, even injection related, medicines have different viscosities, is what she noticed. And that's why, as a nurse, even though she was drunk,
not drunk, but yeah,
she was tipsy. Her instincts was to do the liquid that was viscous, even though the labels were switched. And that's the most heartbreaking thing, is she gave him the correct dose of Toradol, which is like a muscle relaxant, 100 milligrams, and gave him 3 milligrams of morphine, which was the correct dose. And it's, his love for her, because of how she treats him, led him to do so, kill himself in this situation. But in reality, he should have just followed her instincts like she did with the poor Fran who died. Who shout out to Fran, who fucking out, her stash was crazy. I love that. That's a great little funny thing.
Again with the details.
Last thing to bring up is, for me, is also I enjoyed the inheritance lawyer, because he was like, with sound mind and body, blah 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 blah.
He's so fed up. He was literally sitting there and he's just like, listen, there's two facts, this and this. We're good. And they're like, but what is it? But he was like, did you just Google that? I was like, yo, stop.
He's on his phone like,
stop.
But what about Slayer was brought up too.
Uh-huh.
Because I Googled it, but obviously Ransom didn't Google
I
it.
did just Google it.
But I loved how Ransom was sitting there the entire time with a good giggly smile. I thought it was because he knew that they were all losing their inheritance, but it was because he knew that she was going to be Slayer ruled and that he was going to get his inheritance. Oh, fucking great movie. Love that one. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, I didn't
10
realize.
out of 10.
As soon as I realized that there was the same thing as Glass Onion, I was like, I'm going to love this fucking movie.
I think it probably was it better than that with Sight
I
People?
think they're both just as good. I gotta say, like,
This probably was a great shock when it first came out.
this is just it's. I want more.
I love how you were like, this is
I want
Clue.
27.
I like how you were like, this was Clue, and then they were like, this is Clue. There's a picture, and this.
It looks just like Clue.
All right. Ready to wrap it up?
I think so.
Thank you for joining us with the 732 Review Crew. I'm Mikey.
I'm Mike.
And if you do enjoy this movie reaction, do check out our Patreon, which has a full length for this one, as well as movie tier polls every month that you can vote on to decide what we watch every month. Especially next month being Halloween month, you get to decide a spooky movie. And maybe we can convince Eddie to watch those with us because Eddie is really, really, really bad with spooky movies. So we'll get him on it. Don't worry. Otherwise, we'll see you next time. Make sure you check out every other, reaction that we did for movies too. A lot of our movies have been fun. For example, The Matrix was a lot of fun. Fight Club was a lot of fun.
Everything Everywhere All at Once was good.
That was a great one. And if you have any recommendations for
Patreon
movies,
picks are really good, actually.
Patreon. If you have any recommendations for movies that match this level of greatness, let us know. Otherwise, we'll see you next time. Bye.
Toodaloo.